There's a pattern in history that has destroyed three global superpowers in the last 500 years. And right now in 2025, the United States is following that exact same pattern stage by stage, decision by decision, almost like we're reading from the same script that led to catastrophe every single time. Before, in 1590, Spain was the richest empire on earth. They controlled half the world's gold and silver. Their military dominated Europe. Their currency was accepted everywhere. Within 80 years, they were bankrupt, a second-rate power that never recovered. In 1914, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Within 40 years, the empire was gone. The currency collapsed. They became America's junior partner. In 1991, the Soviet Union was the other superpower. Nuclear weapons, global influence, satellites spanning the globe. It ceased to exist in 900 days. Not from war, from economic implosion. 3 times. 3 superpowers. 3 complete collapses, all following the exact same sequence. And here's what should terrify you. The United States has already completed 5 of the 7 stages. We're not approaching the pattern. We're deep inside it. This is the story of how empires die, why they always think they're different, and why the math says we're next. And it's happening faster than anyone wants to admit. Before we go through the pattern, you need to understand what Imperial Collapse actually looks like. Not in textbooks. In practice, what it means when a superpower dies, Imperial Collapse doesn't start with invasion or military defeat. It starts with economic exhaustion. The empire extends beyond its ability to maintain itself. Military bases in 150 countries, wars on multiple fronts, promises it cannot keep, debts it cannot repay. At first, the decline is invisible. The currency still works, the military still wins battles. The government still makes promises, but beneath the surface, the foundation is cracking. Resources are misallocated. Productive capacity shrinks. The best and brightest leave. Then comes the acceleration. Allies start hedging. Enemies test boundaries. Trade partners seek alternatives. The reserve currency status erodes. And suddenly, the advantages that made you powerful become vulnerability. Your currency, once demanded by everyone, comes flooding back home. Your military, spread across the world, becomes unsustainable. Your promises, once guaranteed by strength, become empty words. That's not theoretical. That's what happened to Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. And it happened because they made exactly the same decisions we're making now. They believed their power. There are 7 stages. They happen in order. They always happen in order. And once you reach stage 5, the velocity increases exponentially. Every dying empire starts the same way. A massive influx of wealth creates the illusion of unlimited resources. For Spain, it was the silver mines of Potosí, discovered in 1545. At their peak, these mines produced 60% of the world's silver output. Mountains of precious metal flowing into Spanish ports. The Spanish real became the global currency. Spanish galleons controlled the seas. The wealth was staggering. King Philip II's government received regular shipments of silver worth millions of ducats. The Spanish court became the most opulent in Europe. Spain financed wars across the continent. They built the largest military machine of their age. But here's what they didn't see. The silver wasn't making them rich. It was making them dependent. Spanish industry withered. Why build factories when you can buy anything with silver? Agricultural production declined. Why farm when imported goods are cheaper? The merchant class exported capital. Why invest at home when returns are higher abroad? Britain experienced the same phenomenon, just with a different resource. The British Empire's wealth came from colonial extraction. India alone transferred billions in today's terms. Raw materials flowed in from every continent. The city of London became the world's financial center. British pound sterling was accepted globally. Britain controlled 40% of the world's overseas investments by 1914. The Soviet Union had oil and natural gas by the 1970s. Energy exports were the lifeblood of the Soviet economy. When oil prices spiked in 1973 and 1979, Soviet revenues surged. The leadership believed they could compete with the West economically. They expanded military spending to 27% of GDP. They froze civilian production at 1980 levels. For the United States, the windfall was different, but equally dangerous. The dollar became the global reserve currency after 1944. This gave America what economists call exorbitant privilege. We could print money and export inflation to the rest of the world. We could run trade deficits indefinitely. Foreign nations had to hold dollars to conduct international trade. The pattern is identical. Resource windfall, currency dominance, the illusion that wealth is permanent. This is stage 1. And it creates the conditions for stage 2. The wealth creates confidence. The confidence creates overextension. Every empire follows this sequence. Spain in the 1500s maintained military operations across Europe simultaneously. The 80 Years' War in the Netherlands, wars against France, naval campaigns against England, the defense of Mediterranean territories against the Ottoman Empire. Military spending consumed everything. Philip II declared bankruptcy 3 times during his reign, 1557, 1597. Each time the government restructured its debts and borrowed more. The Spanish Armada in 1588 cost $10 million in today's purchasing power. The fleet was destroyed, the money was gone, but Spain kept fighting. They had to. The empire required constant military pressure to maintain control. Britain's overextension was global. By 1914, the British military and administrative apparatus stretched across 5 continents. The Royal Navy maintained superiority in every ocean. British troops garrisoned India, Africa, the Middle East, and the Pacific. The cost was astronomical. When World War I began, Britain owed £850 million, with interest consuming 40% of government spending. After the war, the debt had multiplied. The empire became economically unsustainable. The Soviet Union's overextension was ideological and military. They maintained satellite states across Eastern Europe. They funded communist movements in Africa, Asia. They fought in Afghanistan for 10 years, hemorrhaging resources. The war alone cost billions of rubles annually. Military spending reached levels that strangled everything else. Civilian goods froze. Consumer satisfaction plummeted, but they couldn't stop. Reducing military spending meant admitting weakness. The United States maintains over 750 military bases in more than 80 countries. Our military budget in 2024 was $874 billion. That's more than the next 9 countries combined. We spend nearly 40% of all global military expenditure. We've been at war continuously since 2001. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, the cost in dollars exceeds $8 trillion. The cost in strategic coherence is incalculable. Our military is everywhere. Our resources are finite. The empire requires constant expenditure to maintain control. We're in Stage 2, and Stage 2 creates the conditions for Stage 3. Military overextension requires financing. Financing requires debt. Debt becomes unsustainable. This is where the math becomes inescapable. Spain's debt spiral was catastrophic. The Spanish crown borrowed from German and Italian bankers at ruinous interest rates. Every silver shipment from the Americas went directly to creditors. By the 1590s, Philip II was spending 3 times his annual revenue. The government taxed Castile into poverty. Farmers abandoned their land. The population fled overseas to escape taxation. The bankruptcy of 1596 destroyed the commercial system in Medina del Campo. The economy collapsed, and the silver kept flowing out to pay old debts. Britain's debt spiral accelerated after World War I. The country borrowed extensively from the United States. Interest payments consumed government budget. Britain devalued the pound by 30% in 1949. It didn't help. Balance of payments crises became routine. Britain approached the IMF for bailouts multiple times in the 1960s and 1970s. The empire was liquidated to service debt. India gained independence in 1947. African colonies followed in the 1960s. The pound sterling lost reserve currency status. The economy stagnated for decades. The Soviet Union's debt spiral was hidden but deadly. Without access to Western credit markets, the Soviets borrowed internally by printing rubles. Inflation surged. Consumer goods disappeared from stores. The government issued IOUs to workers. By the late 1980s, the Soviet economy was contracting. Oil revenues declined as prices fell. Debt accumulated faster than growth. The mathematics became impossible. The system imploded. The United States debt situation is unprecedented in scale. Our national debt hit $38 trillion in October 2025. That's 100% of GDP. We now pay $1.1 trillion per year in interest payments. That's more than we spend on defense. More than education, infrastructure, and scientific research combined. Nearly 1/4 of those interest payments flow to foreign countries, including China. The debt is growing faster than the economy. We're adding trillions every year. The Congressional Budget Office projects debt will reach 166% of GDP by 2054 under current policies. That's optimistic. It assumes no recessions, no wars, no crises. If military spending increases as proposed, the debt could exceed 260% of GDP. The mathematics are simple. We cannot repay this debt. We can only service it, and servicing it requires borrowing more. This is Stage 3, and Stage 3 creates the conditions for Stage 4. When governments cannot service debt through taxation, They debase the currency. They print money. They inflate away obligations. This destroys the purchasing power that made the empire dominant. Spain's currency debasement was literal. The Spanish crown began minting copper coins mixed with silver. The real was debased repeatedly. Inflation surged. Prices in Spain increased 100% during the late 1500s, while tax revenues increased only 50%. Imported goods became prohibitively expensive. Population starved. The currency lost international acceptance. Trade partners demanded hard assets. The commercial system collapsed. Britain's currency debasement was more sophisticated but equally destructive. The gold standard was suspended in 1914. The pound's value against the dollar fell from $4.86 in 1914 to $2.80 by 1940, then to $1.03 by 1985. Each devaluation represented lost purchasing power. Each devaluation meant Britain could buy less from abroad. The empire required imports. Devaluation made empire unsustainable. The sterling area countries abandoned the pound after the 1967. The currency's international role evaporated. The Soviet Union's currency debasement was complete. The ruble was not convertible internationally. It had no value outside Soviet-controlled territories. Inside the USSR, the ruble's purchasing power collapsed. By 1991, store shelves were empty. Workers were paid in money that bought nothing. The government printed rubles to pay obligations. Inflation became hyperinflation. The currency died. The system died with it. The United States is debasing the dollar through expansion of the money supply. Since 2008, the Federal Reserve has created trillions of dollars through quantitative easing. The dollar's purchasing power has declined steadily. Inflation in 2021-2023 reached levels not seen since the 1970s. Consumer prices increased 20% in 3 years. Real wages fell. The dollar remains the global reserve currency, but that status is eroding. China and Russia conduct bilateral trade in yuan and rubles. BRICS nations are developing alternative payment systems. Saudi Arabia accepts yuan for oil sales. The de-dollarization process has begun. It's slow, but it's mathematically inevitable. Every debasement accelerates the process. This is stage 4, and stage 4 creates the conditions for stage 5. Stage 5, predictive decline. This is the stage that kills empires. The economy stops producing real wealth. It becomes extractive, parasitical, financialized. The empire consumes more than it creates. Spain's productive decline was total. The influx of silver destroyed domestic industry. Spanish wool production, once the finest in Europe, collapsed by 60%. The number of sheep in Salamanca fell from millions to thousands. Toledo's textile industry declined by 3/4. Agricultural output plummeted as farmers fled taxation. Spain became dependent on imports, everything: food, manufactured goods, tools. When the silver shipments declined in the 1640s, there was nothing left. No industry, no agriculture, no productive capacity. The economy was a hollow shell. Britain's productive decline took longer but followed the same pattern. British manufacturing peaked in the late 1800s. By 1913, Britain was losing ground to American and German industry. After World War I, British industry stagnated. The elite focused on finance, not manufacturing. The Industrial Revolution's birthplace became an importer of industrial goods. By the 1970s, Britain was the sick man of Europe. Productivity was the lowest in the developed world. Strikes paralyzed the economy. The country had to approach the IMF for bailouts. The Soviet Union's productive decline was masked by statistics. The government reported growth, but the growth was fake. Factories produced goods nobody wanted. Agriculture required massive subsidies to function. Innovation stopped. Technology stagnated. By the 1980s, Soviet industry was decades behind the West. Computers were rare. Consumer goods were shoddy. The economy produced weapons and little else. When reform began, the system collapsed because there was no productive base to reform. The United States is in stage 5 right now. American manufacturing as a percentage of GDP has fallen from 28% in 1953 to 11% in 2024. We've offshored production to China, Mexico, Vietnam. We don't make consumer goods anymore. We don't make electronics. We barely make our own military equipment. Supply chains depend on foreign components. The American economy is now 70% services: finance, insurance, real estate, healthcare, education. These sectors don't produce tradable goods. They recirculate money internally. The wealth is extracted, not created. Corporate profits flow to shareholders through buyback. Investment in productive capacity has stagnated. Research and development spending by private companies has shifted towards software and finance, away from manufacturing and materials. The signs are everywhere. Infrastructure is crumbling. High-speed rail doesn't exist. The electrical grid is outdated. Bridges collapse. The workforce lacks technical skills. Engineering graduates are declining. The best minds go into finance and tech, not production. We're hollowing out. This is Stage 5. The United States is in Stage 5, and Stage 5 creates conditions for Stage 6. When the economy fails, the population loses faith in institutions. The government loses legitimacy. Social cohesion fractures. This stage accelerates collapse. Spain experienced legitimacy crisis in the 1640s. Portugal rebelled and won independence. Catalonia revolted. The population blamed the government for economic misery. The Spanish crown had no solutions. Authority fragmented. Regional identity strengthened. The empire began disintegrating internally. Britain's legitimacy crisis emerged after World War II. The empire had promised prosperity and protection. Instead, it delivered rationing, austerity, and decline. Colonies demanded independence. The British government could not maintain control. India, the crown jewel, was granted independence in 1947. The others followed. By the 1970s, Britain faced strikes, political instability, and economic crisis. The government rotated between Labour and Conservative, with no solutions. Trust in institutions collapsed. The Soviet Union's legitimacy crisis was existential. Gorbachev's reforms revealed the system's failures. Glasnost meant people could speak the truth. The truth was devastating. The economy was broken. The government had lied for decades. The people had suffered for nothing. The republics demanded independence. The Communist Party lost authority. When the August 1991 coup failed, the system had no legitimacy left. It dissolved. The United States is entering Stage 6. Trust in government is at historic lows. Congress has single-digit approval ratings. The Supreme Court's legitimacy is questioned. The presidency is contested every election. The population is polarized to the point of mutual incomprehension. Institutions that held the nation together, media, churches, civic organizations, fragmented. The economic foundation of legitimacy is cracking. Real wages have stagnated for decades. Younger generations are poorer than their parents. Healthcare costs are crushing families. Housing is unaffordable. Student debt is unpayable. The social contract is breaking, and the government offers no solutions that address the mathematical reality. The signs of Stage 6 are visible. We haven't fully entered it, but we're close, and Stage 6 creates the conditions for Stage 7.
The final stage happens fast. Once legitimacy collapses, the empire fragments. This stage is measured in months, not years. Spain's dissolution was gradual, because the empire was geographically dispersed, but the core collapsed rapidly. The 1640s saw simultaneous revolts. The economy imploded. The silver stopped. Spain went from superpower to regional player in a single generation. They never recovered. Britain's dissolution was faster. The empire was liquidated in less than 20 years. India in 1947. Palestine in 1948, Africa through the 1960s. By 1971, Britain was just another European country. The transformation from global empire to middle power took one generation. The Soviet Union's dissolution was the fastest. The August coup failed on August 21, 1991. By December 25, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. 4 months. The republics declared independence in rapid succession. The institutions dissolved. The superpower vanished. The pattern suggests the United States hasn't reached Stage 7, not yet, but the velocity is increasing. Stage 5 took decades for previous empires. We're progressing faster. Information moves faster. Capital moves faster. Collapse moves faster. Here's what the pattern tells us. The United States has completed Stage 5. We're entering Stage 6. The mathematics of debt, currency debasement, and productive decline are inescapable. The timeline is compressing. What took Spain 80 years, took Britain 40 years, took the Soviet Union 900 days. The pattern is always the same. Resource windfall, military overextension, debt spiral, currency debasement, productive decline, legitimacy crisis, rapid dissolution. Every empire believes it's different. Spain thought the silver would last forever. Britain thought the empire was civilizing mission, not exploitation. The Soviet Union thought they'd build communism. The United States thinks we're the indispensable nation. The pattern doesn't care what we think. The pattern is mathematical. The pattern is historical. The pattern is inevitable. And we're in Stage 5. The question isn't whether the pattern applies to us. The question is how fast we move through Stage 6. The question is whether we recognize the pattern in time. The question is whether recognition matters when the mathematics are already in motion. 3 empires, 3 collapses, same sequence, same stages, same outcome. And the United States is following the pattern exactly, stage by stage, decision by decision. Like we're reading from the same script, the collapse is not approaching, we're inside it. The only question left is velocity.